Hello, everyone, the one that is watching right now. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited that you are making your time on Sunday evening to join us with all these experts. We have 3 experts tonight to talk about communication skills and employers' expectation, which is one of the hottest topic, one of the most common topic when it comes to communication. Usually, student will always ask graduate always ask what are expectations from employers when it comes to communication skills. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our speakers for tonight. There you go. So you can see everyone on the screen right now. And I am so happy that all of you are able to join me. All 3 of you are friends and colleagues and definitely an expert in communication, and allow me to take my time to introduce our speakers for tonight. The first speaker for tonight is Dr. Moniza Wahid. Dr. Moniza, or fondly, I call her fondly as Moni, but because we are friends. Dr. Moniza is actually Associate Professor in Communication, multiple award winner in academia, an author, and she is currently a media officer at Ministry of Higher Education, Malaysia. And I call her an overachieving Asians because, you guys, seriously, this woman has like 17 awards or something. And it's who has 17 awards? Just tell me. Who in the world have 17 awards? But she got 17 awards. So that's why when I read her profile, I was like, she has 17 awards? Like, she definitely an overachieving Asian. Who does this? So anyway, so this is Dr. Moniza. We are very, very honored to have her with us tonight. The next speaker, a wonderful, wonderful lady. She's actually a childhood friend of mine. I feel that I need to mention that because we go way back. And her name is Dr. Diana Casimon. She is a senior lecturer in communication, writer, passionate researcher, international public speaker. She speaks everywhere, including a pub. I think it was, where was it, Indiana? It was in...
That was back in 2000. Wait, when was that? 2017, 18, around there?
Yeah, before the pandemic.
Yes.
Life was wonderful before the pandemic. We can do also wonderful stuff. But anyways, she is a travel enthusiast, very interested in culture, and wonderful, wonderful, devoted cat mom. I have to, some people in comment already, woo, Dr. D. Yes, Dr. D. And she is, I have to mention this, Dr. D recently got her PhD in communication last year. I need to mention this because getting a PhD is hard, man. Trust me, it's not easy. So when someone get a PhD, let's throw a party. Let's throw a party for 7 days straight, whatever, So that is Dr. D. And the next speaker that all the way from Mumbai, right? Surab, I hope I got it right.
New Delhi.
No,
That's fine.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
You see? Wow, I am so sorry. Why do I think that you are from? Because we met in Mumbai like 6 years ago, but you're not from Mumbai, right? You're in New Delhi.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. Surab is international award winning. He also have like bunch of award. These people have lots of award, you guys, like seriously. And he's an international award winning strategist, a strategy consultant, founder, board member of World Communication Association Davos. And as you can see in the last few minutes, that she's an awesome guy. Even if I got his location wrong, he actually doesn't mind. So What time is it with you right now, Surab?
It's 5:36 p.m. So yeah, tea time.
Oh, okay. It's tea time. So for us here, it's 8 p.m. All right. Okay. So I'm in the presence of all of you that is watching right now. You know, all the comment are full of laughter and smiling. And for all of you who's watching right now, I'm in the presence of really, really great communicators. So for all of you that is tuning, you are in for a treat. So stay until the last minute of this conversation. There are so many things that we wanted to unpack tonight. So let me kick off the conversation on employers' expectation and communication skills. So basically, in my experience as a founder of Clue to the Zoo, which is we focus on developing various skills for students, one of the most common theme when it comes to communication skills is that there are some how do I say, I read somewhere, or there are some team that people say that employers blame poor communication skills as part of the reason when a graduate is not hired. So I'm going to start this conversation with Dr. Moniza. Can you share in your observation as a media officer, you work in Ministry of Higher Education right now. So what are the most common communication issues among graduates, if you can share with us tonight?
Well, thank you very much, Marianne. Thank you very much for having me. It's a wonderful panel. And when Maria invited me, I said, "Woo, it's going to be a party. So let's have a party here tonight." But going back to the question, what are the problems with our fresh graduates? And we always tend to blame that it's a communication problem. And of course, we know there are many types of communication, but essentially, I think what employers are looking for are four types specifically. One is the nonverbal communication, and the second would be verbal communication. The third would be writing, and finally, visual communication. So, to get 1 foot, or for an internship at least, 1 foot in, what would be most important is written communication, because without being able to convince someone that you are worthy of that position, you have to send in a resume and a cover letter. So in that sense, written communication takes precedence. But once you are in the organization, that's your time to prove what you really can do. And in that instance, I would say that both verbal and written still play a big part. And if anyone wants to work in media, of course, visual comes into play as well, especially if you are going to do graphics and things like that. And it's difficult to say which one is more important than the other. I would say that they're all equally important. However, they're important at different times or different phases of your job, because you don't do the same thing every day. It's not like being a student where you're expected to go to class, you're expected to do presentations, but in the working world, the tasks change a lot on a daily basis, maybe even on an hourly basis. So being able to master different types of communication skills, at least these four that I have mentioned, is extremely important. And what makes people like their employees, I believe, is really nonverbal communication, which takes up anywhere between 60 to 93% of our communication. So people look at how what our gestures are like, how are we responding to them, are we reading the room? So reading the room is extremely, extremely important, knowing what the climate of the topic being investigated is at that time and point. So it's really hard to really pinpoint which type of communication is extremely important. I'm just going to say, coming from a communication background, I can't say like, yeah, you got to be really good at talking and that's it. Right? That's not really such a thing, right? One of the worst things we could also hire is someone who talks really well but doesn't know how to do any work. So in that case, there's no point. We'll be let down. So yes, communication issues.
So, okay, I wanted to there's a lot to unpack, Dr. Moniza. You know, you touch like many different type of communication, nonverbal, writing, speaking. So I'm gonna pause you there, and I am going to go to Dr. D, and I'm going to ask Dr. D, okay, so Dr. Moniza say that, employers are looking at all these qualities. What universities are doing right now to actually prepare them with all the skills? Because look, it's very easy for us to say, you know what, we need all the skills, blah 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 blah, but university is the station, the part where before they go to employment. So what are universities doing right now to prepare our graduate for employment?
Okay, thank you for the question. So in my opinion, this is something that we really, really need to address, because it depends on the university. Of course, we can claim that students take some courses, and some of them, especially those probably don't belong to social sciences, probably they might take some communication subjects or social sciences subjects as their electives. However, if we look at deeper, and then I think that the question, even what Dr. Moniza had mentioned just now, that is probably not enough. And I personally find that universities need to at least have a course or something that trains students on how to speak properly, how to dress properly. At the end of the day, if you don't take yourself seriously, how do you expect the employers to take you seriously, if you know what I mean? And I find it difficult as well, because usually when students at the university and then they go to the actual work life, it's like a transition going on. And I think this is where we need to get themselves prepared. The transition between life as a student and then later on, life as an adult. That's what they call it. Well, let's adult, adulting. So this is something that we need to prepare students.
What is adulting?
Yeah, what is adulting? And in fact, we are still actually struggling with adulting. But imagine for students who probably just fresh from the university, and then they need to adapt to the work life, that can be a bit difficult and confusing, because probably the mindset probably is not prepared, and then they might not sure what to expect from there. So, and I from my observation, because I had been teaching at least this is the third universities that I had had privilege to teach. So I think that it depends. So some universities, they have that, they prepare that by having like some short course or workshop, but some universities, they don't. So I'm not sure, but I think this is something that I think a lot of universities need to address, especially, in terms of having this whole marketability of graduates. That should be part of it.
And I think I see also some universities are very active. I've been invited also to speak and to help students in terms of communication skills. I don't know about other universities, so I guess this is something that university should, for those of you working for university, maybe you can pay attention. This is something that you should do for your students to prepare them for working life. Now I'm going to go to Surab. Surab, I have two questions here actually. One is that for this is a context. It's interesting to see different countries' context, because for Malaysians, for our graduate, they always say about comes to skills, it's all about the lack of confidence, they don't have training, they are not exposed enough, for example. So I would like to ask you, is it the same case in India as well, when communication skill and graduate in India?
Yeah. Firstly, thanks, Nurul, for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to be the only Indian in this room right now. I hope there are a few Indians attending. Hi, Dr. D and Dr. Moniza. Great points overall. And my answer could be very short, Nurul. It's very similar, back in India. I think everybody is obsessed about great communication skills, and especially so because majority of the new jobs that are getting created, at least in this part of the world, are in the professional services or the services sector. Let's put it the services sector. Now, it could be professional services like maybe a little bit higher end services like consulting or IT and things like that. But it could also be consumer services like retail, people working in cafes and working in e-commerce companies and edtech companies. So the need for expressing yourself, the need to write well, the need to listen well, is exponentially higher, right? Which basically means that if you're a great communicator, sometimes, I like to make a little bit fun of this situation, but even if you're sitting for a finance job and you don't know too much of finance, but you know how to speak well, uh, people are biased. It's strange, but people are biased about people who speak well, and they think that everything else can be taught. But if they can express themselves well, you have a couple of extra brownie points to while you go to the next round of your interview. So to
Yeah.
answer your question in a short way, there's a very deep bias in the Indian employment scene for good quality communicators, but there are very few people who can. So it's a big uphill task,
No,
and
I
yeah.
think, yeah, okay, I am going to catch your point there. So basically, look, for those who are watching right now, I think when Surab say that people are biased for people who communicate well, it's not a remote cases. People are biased everywhere for people well. So even if I have a situation where people like, have you ever been in a room where somebody can speak very well and then you kind of like, what is he even talking about? You kind of lost this person, but the fact that they can communicate well can command the room and make people have a certain perception, like positive perceptions about them. So basically, that's why communication skill is important. And actually, we have I'm going to like touch upon. There, somebody asked a question actually in the audience. I will ask Dr. Moniza this question because somebody said that just now you said, one of the skills that people should have is ability to read the room. So Dr. Moniza, do you have any tips on how to read a room actually?
That's a really good question. Because like I mentioned before, nonverbal communication can consist up to 93% of effective communication, right? And the ability to read the room comes with your emotional quotient. So as we all know, there's the intelligence quotient, which is reflected in your CGPA. You could be a 4.0 student, and that would be wonderful. But there's also the emotional quotient. The emotional quotient, basically, what it tries to do, not what it tries to do, what it does is the ability for people to recognize, understand, use, manage your own emotions and other people's emotions. And you learn how to manage situations based on this ability, right? And there's lots of research on increasing your emotional quotient. How do you become better at reading the room? And well, without getting too scientific, I think what helps is when you socialize.
Okay.
And that's so difficult right now, right? Considering that we all have to stay in our houses and look at the computer screens. But yeah, talking more with people, learning to empathize with what they're going through, even empathizing with your boss. Yeah, a lot of undergrads they only empathize maybe with themselves or with their friends. But really, I think you need to learn how to empathize with your boss as well. If I can give an example here, right? Especially in media, sometimes we get really busy towards the end of the day. And sometimes new recruits, they think that it's a 9-to-5 job, especially if you're in the government. But let me tell you, there's no such thing as a 9-to-5 job. So at 5 o'clock, when things get really busy, that's not when you leave, right? Because you have to empathize with the situations like, oh, it's really busy right now. I should stay back and see if my help is needed. Not
But
that,
people want a work-life balance. I need
yeah,
my work-life
I know.
balance.
Balance it out in some other way, but you have to read the room. Like, does anyone else need my help? I'm here to help you. If you're having a hard time, let me help you. So I think emotional quotient, or at least reading the room can be, it's a skill that can be honed by socializing more, by listening to other people more. And one great way, I believe, we can't do it right now, but one great way is to watch other people when you go to the cafe. And then I don't know if anyone else has tried doing this, but people watching, I think, is really great. It's a great way for you to learn to read what other people are trying to communicate through their body language. Yeah, so when we are able to go out again, when we all get our vaccinations done, go out again, we should definitely go out, sit in a coffee shop somewhere, and try to watch people and try to figure out, I wonder what they're talking about, just
Yes.
by their gestures and their nonverbal communication. That, I believe, increases the emotional quotient and your ability to read the room.
I think it's tough now because when we are sitting in a cafe, we are actually playing with our phone most of the time. So that's why it
Oh yeah, I
hinders
forgot about that.
progress and how do we feel our emotions. So guys that is watching right now, please go to the cafe after the lockdown and start. Somebody say, wow, stalking costs. Somebody is okay, I am going to ask Dr. D. This is the questions that I got today. Somebody asked that, during for university student, right? This is, I feel very tough for them, worldwide, especially in Malaysia, maybe in India, it's also. But in Malaysia right now, we are currently on lockdown. We are still on lockdown, and we don't know how long that this lockdown going to last. And our university student has been on and off campus for the past 1 year, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, Dr. D, for the past 1 year, sometimes they come back, but most of the learning is being done online.
That's right.
So they ask these questions. This is the year, this is the time where they're supposed to be developing their emotional intelligence, communication skills. They're supposed to read people's body language, but they cannot do that because they're all sitting at home in front of their computer and they don't see their friends. They're not sitting in the lecture room, or they're not arguing with friends in the faculty. It doesn't matter. And all sort of experience that they should have. So how can students, in all the limitation that we have right now during the pandemic, develop their communication skill?
Okay, so that is certainly a very big concern in my opinion, especially, I was just thinking about it, before you actually brought this up regarding on, especially for those in the final year, and then that is the time that, probably they need more real life interaction. They need, even just doing the group work, you need this kind of human touch as well, so for the first year students, even worse, for the fact that, it's their first year of university, they don't get the chance to experience the campus life. So I genuinely feel sorry that they have to, to be in this situation. And it is just difficult because, especially this is pandemic, and then usually, you create all these communication skills, or you develop communication skills, or you observe the social cues, just like what Dr. Muniza had mentioned just now, if you actually have physical interaction or face-to-face interactions. But right now, during whatever that you can see, or online learning, is a bit difficult. So my suggestion for the student is, I know this is a tough time, and it's almost impossible, because in fact, when I conduct my classes, some of them are probably in Africa, some of them are probably in China, and then you have to match with the Malaysian time. So that is another hurdle for them as well. So it's just that I strongly encourage, especially during the online lessons, let's say, please be more active, be more participative. So at least that's one of the ways for you to actually, communicate. And then, just don't be afraid of asking questions, because if you don't do that, how do we know that you are actually having problems? Or probably, we don't know, because we cannot see you. So because as much as we are trying to help, you also need to actually tell us, okay, look, we need help, and these are my concerns, for example. So, I think one of the ways as well that I personally do for my classes, your students actually can give some tasks that actually can help in terms of challenging their critical thinking skill, give some tasks, give some situations, and then probably put in the breakout rooms and see how they can manage to solve the problem, for example. So that is one of the ways, at least at the at what do you call that, online teaching level. Because of course it would be better if we can have physical classes, but it's just that I think that is the best that we can do for now. And I'm sure that there are the lectures they are trying as well to make the class interesting. So if if there are any class activities, I really hope students are being more participative towards this. Just to sit, being a backbencher, so that is not something that you need to do, because I understand, I know this, don't be tricky. I know that you might click the link to Zoom during the class, but you're not actually present. Probably, okay, I'm just going to do this for the sake of attendance. Let me just go to bed somewhere. So we know this, okay? We're all human. So let's just try to accommodate each other. So that is my opinion and suggestion towards how we can actually manage and develop communication skills. And, we need to start somewhere, even if it's at the small for the smallest thing. So that's my opinion.
Do you practice, I would say not forcing, but do you practice asking your students switch on their cameras during the session, or
Oh
this is
my
up to them?
goodness. Of course, that is something that, guys, turn on the camera. But the problem is, well, I can't force, because it's a bit difficult. I mean, I can understand for some students actually might be living in areas that don't have fast internet connection. So probably that might take more data.
Yeah.
So I cannot force that as well. So for those living in urban areas, you might want to do it. But I know some classes, some students have done it well. It's just that for those probably having limited data, so that could be a bit of an issue.
Okay, so students, please participate actively during these, classes, because we are in a very limited, how we communicate is changing rapidly right now. So like Dr. D said, the least you can do is communicating during the classes, ask questions, you have some ideas, throw it out. Like educator always say that there's no stupid questions. So ask questions, whatever that you feel like. So I'm going to bring this conversation almost on the same line to Surab. This is a question that I get before, where somebody said that, okay, now that we are all, because they are going to approach employers, right? So they're all going to approach employers to get a job. Before this, there are always chances, career day or all sort of day where they can meet employers physically. Now, how can they actually approach, potential employers or recruiters online without being awkward? So this is one of the, can you give some tips for all the young people? How can they approach employers or something virtually without being rude or without being awkward?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Nurul, and it's something that reflects the reality that we live in. And one of the skills, along with communication skills, that as fresh graduates you ought to be building now, is what I would call as digital literacy skills, and that covers a lot of ground. One of them is showing up, in by putting on your camera if you can, and if internet is not a problem. I know a lot of people who wouldn't still show up because it's so much easier not to stare at the screen, and it can be very tiring if you have classes all day round. But showing up is very, very critical in front of the camera. Earlier, it was just about creators, digital creators who had to record their videos and get live on Facebook Live and now YouTube Live, but now everybody has to show up. So putting out your screen presence in front of the camera, and how you want to do that, maybe with a good background. Like, for example, I'm sitting in my bedroom, but that's not what you see. So you have to be careful about these small things. But now coming back to Nurul's question, right? So how do you approach employers? I think during this time, I've seen a couple of good practices. One, update your LinkedIn profile and make it appear really professional, right? And you can also do yourself a lot of favor by being a little bit active in a professional way, which basically means that when HR managers and business leaders are putting up their updates on LinkedIn, you can participate by commenting on them, but you've got to be authentic. You're in a way seeking their attention. Please remember, everybody likes to be commented upon. And it doesn't matter if it's the CEO of a company or a fresh graduate, right? So if you can make yourself visible over there by putting out a really nice comment, a good point of view, or maybe even simply appreciating what has been put up, That's one way of showing up. Now, the thing is, the moment you've done that, if this person really likes your comment, he or she is going to go to your LinkedIn profile and say, hey, who's this person? Is he really smart, or is it just a great comment, right? And that's why you need a great profile. And a great profile starts with a great picture. You need to have a proper headshot. It has to be professional enough, or depending on the kind of role. So if you want to be a radio jockey, you don't want to be wearing a suit. So it depends on what you're seeking. But a very smartly written about section, very well laid out, qualifications. If you've been doing certifications, please highlight them, because that's the best way to demonstrate what you're really interested in. So that's one quick tip, right? The other I would suggest, if you
That
can
is
afford,
brilliant tips, Surab, really.
yeah. The second one, if you can afford, try to take a premium LinkedIn connection so that you are allowed to send a couple of in-mails to people who matter. But don't spam them, you know. So, so I get a lot of these emails, right? Many of them get my name wrong. So because they're just writing to everyone. So, but of course, these are tough times. I'm not harsh at them. So I just say, hey, but I'm happy to help you, but I'm not Rakesh. So,
Oh, yeah,
and,
I'm not.
right. So those things happen, right? I think in general, people are becoming more empathetic after COVID. They're more forgiving as well. So don't be afraid to express yourself, but don't spam. You know, personalize. If you really think that this is the company you want to work for, and you have found the recruiting manager for that particular company, or you found a senior leader, try to understand more about the company. Have a point of view again about why you want to work over there, what kind of role you're seeking. It's not necessary that they have something open for you. I can tell you from my experience, a lot of people approach me for jobs. And what I do is, if they've written really well and it's not spammy, I try to help them out by redirecting somewhere else. Maybe not in this company, somewhere else. Maybe one of my clients is seeking a position. So don't even think about whether you're going to get a response or not, right? But make sure that you just don't send hundreds and thousands and wait for some sort of a hit rate. You know, personalize, you know, prepare really well before writing. And I can tell you, you will get great success. And if you're failing, that's not a problem. You keep trying, right? That's the third tip. Don't stop trying.
That is okay. There's so much to unpack there. I am so excited with your tips because look, for those who are watching right now, Mr. Surab just give brilliant tips to approach employers during the pandemic when you can't see them, face to face, by updating your LinkedIn, making it look professional, have a good headshot, so that you have no idea how many times that I actually saw people profile on LinkedIn and I cringe because the picture that they have, I mean, one, like, okay, I don't know what is the do and don'ts here, but I don't think you should put a picture of your whole family or maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend in your LinkedIn profile. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I don't know. But I feel that this is your LinkedIn profile. So it has to be a professional looking headshot because it's a professional platform. Facebook, Instagram, that's different story. But this is LinkedIn. There are certain do and don'ts that I think the students or graduate or young people should pay attention. Having a good about me section is also very good. And getting a person's name right, that is precious because look, I feel that people just, some people name is different and you can just put, like you said, Surab and hi Mr. Prakash. That is just spamming. Come on, that is the most disrespectful thing you can do to someone. So I feel that you are touching a lot of important points there when it comes to social media etiquette when you're approaching people to get a job. Okay, you have something to add.
I have one more point to add, Nurul. Just came as a recall because I think it's worked really well, and it might help a lot of the graduates listening today. When you're writing a one-to-one message on, let's say, LinkedIn, right, which is the professional medium these days, seek help and not a job. You know, if you tell them that I'm looking for a job, very few chances, very little probability you'll get a response back. But if you say that I'm seeking some mentorship, I don't know how to approach this industry. I want to get into marketing. Can you guide me? Can you speak with me for a couple of minutes? You'll be quite surprised. People are happier to help. They're willing to help. A lot of times they can't give you jobs because that's not in their control. But by talking to you, you get a chance to express yourself. And for all you know, it might just open a couple of doors for you, either with the same person or with a couple of other people. It works. Trust me on that.
Wow. Wow. Mind blown. Completely. Mind blown. Instead of asking for job, you actually can ask them to help you. And I think a lot of people are very empathetic right now and they wanted to help. So you never know what door that they can open for you. So Dr. Maniza, do you have anything to add on this point?
To add, yeah, actually, it's really, I can totally relate to what Surab is saying, because just yesterday, I think I got an email from a student wanting to be my supervisee, but the student said that I'm not sure he or she wanted to do a PhD in astrophysics or something else. So I think the student may have copied and pasted the email from something online and just hope that it would work. But the student got my name right though. Besides that, I think it's also really important how for graduates to learn how to write an email, just as Surab has said, because sometimes these are really small things. The devil is in the details, right? Sometimes students write everything in the title, but then there's absolutely nothing in the body of the email. And you think like, is this how we do it nowadays? I'm not completely sure. And also email is one thing, but I think a lot of fresh graduates, maybe out of desperation nowadays, they're also trying to reach employers through other forms of communications, such as WhatsApp messages. So I am not completely sure if this is an appropriate way of reaching out to someone for an organization seeking for employment or even mentorship for that matter. I still think that the traditional email is the best way to go. So it's really important for our graduates to learn how to write an email. And if you're depending on what language you're writing it, it doesn't matter, but write it correctly in that language that you are writing. If it's in Bahasa Melayu, make sure that things are spelled correctly, the sentences are written correctly, and if it's in English, make sure they're limited grammatical error. Having said that, I think that language skills is also something that a lot of employers are complaining about from our graduates, right? They're saying like, oh, our students our fresh graduates can't seem to master English very well. But then again, I'm thinking, well, English is a second language. It's nice if students can write really well, speak, read, write really well in English. However, we also must keep in mind that we are not seeking for perfection. We're seeking for students who are trying, because when we see that you try, we see that, oh, you're really serious about this, and it's okay, because language skills is something that can be learned and can be taught over time. So yeah, those are just some of the things that I would like to add to what Surab has already mentioned.
Okay, so from that, Dr. D, are university doing anything to prepare the student on this new way of communicating right now? Is there anything that actually could be done, for example?
I'm sure they must be somewhere, but I'm not sure how they're doing this. But it's not part usually of a lot of faculties or departments. Probably they might just outsource it from somewhere. And then just to add some to the points of what Surab and Dr. Moniza had mentioned regarding I like the devil in the details. So especially when of course communicating online takes another level. So let's say even before you approach somebody, this is what I've been telling students. I used to I used to be involved with all this internship and things like that, and I could observe some of these patterns, and I'm like, why this is happening? For example, even the smallest thing like the email username or Zoom username, make sure you have your name. let's say if your name is Diana, just make sure Diana.Kasiman and whatever, Gmail or Yahoo, not by having some funny anime name or probably sexy sweet girl at gmail.com. You will be surprised how much this have come up, like imagine like you send an email to the HR or whatever, for the organization, and then you see that username, whatever that I just mentioned, sexy sweet girl at whatever at gmail.com, and then subject application for the post of executive. Do you think that person is going to take you seriously? I doubt it. Even now, let's say not now, with this whole Zoom online communication thing, let's say if you're being called for the interview, so you make sure that you have your actual name on the screen, not by having some nicknames. If
Is that
it's
really
okay.
happened? Like, is that a real story?
Yes, it does happen. It does happen. I've seen that as well. I mean,
Okay.
we don't want this.
Interesting stories tonight.
Yeah, even the smallest thing, that the username of the email, sometimes probably they might have this email since forever, since they were in school, and they'll be using it even to communicate among the peers. But once you are communicating it for a formal reason, you have to change your username. Don't use the same email. Nobody wants to communicate with sexy sweet girl at gmail.com, please. So that is something that people might want to pay attention to.
You will be surprised, because I mean, I always say this. Sometimes I have to mention things that I feel that common sense, but sometimes common sense is not so common. So that's why I even when I give some tips, I feel that I can tell that, guys, this is common sense. I know this is common sense. I don't even know why I mentioned this, but it need to be said, because like Surab said, the things that, the story that you tell tonight, for example, getting name wrong, or writing to Dr. Moniza, wanted to do astrophysics, and having sexy sweet name as the Zoom name, you would think that this is not happening in this community of intelligent people, but it's still happening. So this is something that I guess in communication, before we go into deeper, developing all other parts of emotional intelligence or whatever, first get all these things right. I think that. So I guess, okay, there are many, the comments are moving right now about, oh, don't ever write email to Dr. D and never address her as Dr. D. It spells doom. So
That's not
right.
true.
Okay, I am going to go to back to Dr. Moniza, where we're going to talk about communication skills and confidence level. And communication skills and confidence level is somehow, I believe that it's kind of interrelated, So does that mean that lack of confidence actually contributed to lack in their communication skills?
Another good question, Maria. I think in some ways it definitely does. Confidence affects communication skills, but also that's just a short answer, right? Also, there are lots of things that come with confidence. I feel like being knowledgeable is probably one of it. Being positive about something contributes to your confidence level. But if you don't have confidence, will it affect your communication skills? To an extent, because I feel that some people are also really good at faking it. And that is a skill that we all need to learn, right? Like fake it till you make it. Because I don't think there's really anyone out there who is 100% confident all the time. I think most of us are faking it most of the time, but it's a survival skill. We can't really.
I'm gonna cut you off and say, like, nobody got their shit together all the time. So
No,
we just
absolutely
wing
not.
it.
No. Even the bosses, even the most successful people, I think, in their mindset, thinking like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do about this? I'm in trouble. But at the meeting, you'll be like, don't worry, we'll settle everything. Yes, it's within our control. We'll give you the report at the next meeting. But really, after the meeting is over, they go back to their own cubicles and think like, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do? Right? Being honest is great, but being too honest, maybe you want to not be so transparent, especially if you're new in a workplace. You want to communicate in a way that inspires confidence. If you don't know something, you can say like, "Oh, I'm not too sure about it, but you know what? I'm gonna check up on that. I'm gonna find out, and I'll get back to you." So there's some sort of promise that you are going to do something, but were you confident? Absolutely not. But you were not communicating in a way that does not inspire confidence, right? And I think most of the time, maybe a lot of our fresh graduates, they don't appear confident because number one, they don't practice the skill of looking like they got it together, even when they don't. Number two, I think it's just general fear of being wrong or failing. And I feel this is something we really need to shed from our society. It's okay to not be right 100% of the time, but be humble about it if you are caught doing something wrong. And it's okay if you don't know things, but you have to put in the effort to learn how to do certain things. But yes, confidence and communication, they go hand in hand. I'm sure all of us have entered a meeting where we see this person doing an amazing job at a presentation, and you think like, wow, I wish I was as smart as that person. I wish that I had it together like this person. But then again, we have to think how much preparation went into that presentation, right? How much
So
work went in.
I like when you said that, you know, we all fake it till we make it, where we're not always confident, but to some extent, confident level do influence how we communicate. And there is a question here I'm going to ask related to this one, to Surab. Is it because we fear of being wrong? Is that the reason why we refuse to communicate, or we feel that we don't have anything nice to say? Or is that why that we stutter, or maybe it hinders our communication abilities?
I think it's a great question, and you know, following Dr. Moniza's comments over here, you know, it takes me back to my own personal story. So, by the way, I didn't crack every possible interview. I failed several. So I have to share about two of my MBA interviews, which I failed. So after my engineering, one of them was with a really great institution, and they asked me about my computer science project in the final year, something which I hadn't really done well on. So, you know, it's I don't know how it is in Malaysia, but I'm sure it's similar. So we we had a team of 4 people, and I was not the coder. I was the manager. I was good at managing things. I was just quite lousy when it came to coding. Uh, but the professor on the other side who was interviewing me wanted to know more about the project, which I mentioned in my resume. And I came to know later that he was a computer science guy. So, so, you know, even if I tried to fake it, it actually
It doesn't work.
did not work for me. You know, it actually, I could have, in hindsight, and I did not get selected, of course. I tried to fake the response. In hindsight, had I told him very clearly, you know, I don't know much about this. I was not the guy who was coding it. Can you ask me about this topic where I'm a lot more confident? You know, having the confidence to acknowledge that you're not good at something or what you're being asked
The
about.
humility also,
Yeah, yeah, it's very important, right? Because the other person on the other side, please remember, interviewers are highly experienced. They can see through your fakeness. In hindsight, I would not even want to put that project in big, bold highlight on my resume. I thought it's a very cool project, therefore I should put it up. Maybe it gets me an interview, but then I'll get exposed, right? So somewhere you've got to be very careful about the things you talk about. So from that experience, I went to my third interview. The second one also I failed, but for a different reason. The third one I didn't fail this time. So you know, there's this very interesting thing about sitting in an interview and playing true to your strengths, right? That also works with confidence. So if you're really good at something, you can try and bring that into the discussion very smartly. So you're not good at something, so you can give a small answer, but gradually build a story that connects back to your strengths. So in my third interview, I had a behavioral science professor interviewing me. And she asked me, "What are your hobbies?" I said, "Now this is my game," right?
Now I
I'm
can
going to
talk
lead
about
this.
it.
I was like, I'm going to lead this interview now. You need to get into that situation where you know what your strengths are. And I spoke about physiognomy, which I was practicing for a while, which is translates to the art of face reading. I was just lucky that the professor on the other side had also read about it. So, and she was like, "Can you read my face?" And I was like, "Oh, wow, I'll do that." You know, and I said all the good things, right? so, so I could have obviously there were good things and there were not so good things, but I insisted on saying the good things. In my second interview where I failed, I was also asked to read face, and I was too honest. And I said a couple of really bad things about the professor. And obviously, you know what the answer was. I got rejected.
Where
Right?
was okay? Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So,
so I think
yeah,
from your story there will be there should be a balance, right? I that's what I gauge here, that the balance and where you should share and where is your limitation, for example.
right, right. And most importantly, again, it's reading the room, being aware of the environment, and and there's this wonderful technique. It's there for every meeting. An interview is a meeting. Don't make it so scary, right? It's just a meeting that you're having with someone. There's a wonderful technique if you want to have successful meetings and good outcomes. You try to mimic the personality and the style of speaking of the person on the other side of the table. If he's in a fun mood or she's in a fun mood, you can be a bit relaxed and smile a little bit more. If he or she is looking very professional and to the point, you better be to the point. So it's not trying to. It's just again reading the room, being a little bit more intelligent about what's really going on, and whether you can take the discussion to a casual topic or would you want to prefer to be very, very serious in your conversation. In the end, people like to hire people who fit into the culture, who have a pleasing personality,
Yeah.
not necessarily great speakers, not necessarily people who are going to be on TED Talks all the time. So, so don't worry about too much
How
about.
many of us managed to get to TED Talk anyway? So,
Right.
so okay. I'm gonna bring the one that you just said right now to Dr. D, right? So, to sum up this confident and communication part, how do we find that balance again? How do we find the balance between we are confident but not to sound, look arrogant, where we strike that balance? Or you don't want, I'm going to swear a little bit for the audience, you have to get used to this. We don't want to come across as an asshole or as an arrogant prick. So, so basically, where do we strike that balance? I'm confident, but I don't want to be that people will think that, okay, she's a smart ass or we don't like her. So, any tips on that?
Okay. So there are actually two categories of candidates generally. Okay. Number one, people who are actually not confident at all, getting extremely nervous. In fact, I know we get nervous all the time too. Doesn't matter how many talks we had given. So we do get that. So I get that. So for this one, I will usually tell people, put on your best clothes, put on your best lipstick, wear your best heels, whatever that makes you feel good. Let's say if you get rejected, you don't feel so bad because you actually win probably on the other thing. Because I remember when I was a fresh graduate, what I did was, I would make sure that okay, let me be the sharpest person in the room. Who cares if they feel, oh my God, she looks intimidating? But to me, well, if only you know what's in my heart, then it doesn't matter. People don't have to know what's really inside you, so just like the appearance matters, just like what Surab had said. People might like that, if people look, especially if you take yourself serious. So that is the first kind of people. For the next one, the next type will be, we've been preaching this a lot to people, build your confidence, be confident in whatever you do, even for your interview. And you don't want to come across as someone really, really arrogant as well. So for example, okay, for you can still convey the message to the interviewers to let them know about your achievement. So, but there are things that you might want to avoid here. Probably the use of superlative. Like I'm the best project manager for this. Like all
I'm
the
awesome.
I'm the most awesome candidate. Look at my CV and tell me what the rest have. So you don't want that. So it's not about so much about what you say. It's about how you say it. And then plus, when you try to convey something, strategizing the way how you say it is as important as the content itself. So that is very, very important. So you need to make sure that probably you might want to pick the right words, the right vocabularies to actually describe your
Got it.
achievements. So yeah, so that's the best. For example, yeah, probably you might be the top of the class, so you might want to say something, probably or probably it's okay if you don't mention it at all because you have written everything in the CV. So that those are the things, because I'm sure all of us, I'm sure Dr. Moniza, you yourself, and Surat, we all had gone through these interviews. How many of you actually hate the question, tell us about yourself? So that
Oh
is,
no, sometimes this is something that I always laugh when people say like, tell me about your weaknesses. I'm a perfectionist. Okay, that's not a weakness.
that could be a
What
weakness
are you even
too.
talking about? So, like, don't. So there are people ask me like, how do we answer? What is your weaknesses, or tell me about yourself? So like, what is the best practice, Dr. D? If you ask someone asks.
You might, let's say, if tell me about yourself. Okay, so that is, I did some exercise to my students regarding like, okay, probably you might want to list the 10 best qualities that you have. So if you read that, some of them, you might want to avoid things like I'm charming, I'm good looking. You might want to avoid that. Come on, so probably you might want to push
People
on the
can
other
see
qualities
that,
of,
let people
yes,
decide if you're good looking or
yeah,
not. You don't have
you'll
to
be
say.
surprised that happened too, So probably they get nervous. So that because people get nervous, so you'll be like, okay, let me just say the first things that come in my head. So I mean, we are humans, so you might want to try to push more on the values. For example, probably I'm a very dedicated person, I'm honest, I'm hardworking, I can work better with less monitoring. So those are the things that you might want to push, or I'm a fast learner rather than putting something that a bit, people will be like, you don't want anything cringy, believe me. So that is just not the way to go about,
Okay, that's a very good tips. And okay, pay attention, everyone. Do not, if you want to say that you're good looking, let people decide. You don't tell people that you're looking. I have to. Anyway, so I'm gonna go to a little bit of I'm gonna throw this question to both Surab and Liza, but let Dr. Liza answer first. Yeah, but this about, we're gonna touch a little bit on gender. So do you think there is a gender disparity when it comes to communication? Because there is some opinion, and this is not a remote opinion, that men are much more assertive, and it's okay for them to be assertive because they are men, that in communication, and because of that, they are in better position to get promoted or to get hired. So if men come off as confident and talking about their achievements, it's okay. But if women does that, she's, I'm gonna say the B word here, she's a bitch. So, do you have any comments on this? I'm going to go to Dr. Moniza first, and then after that, I'm going to ask Surab to answer on the man perspective.
Yes, I expect there to be some discrepancies between how women view the world and how men view the world. Being a woman, I feel there is a disparity, not so much in how we are able to communicate. I feel that there's a disparity in how people are accepting of our messages, right? I feel that the disparity exists within the receivers more than the speakers itself. Because, like Dr. D, being a lecturer in communication where we have to deal with male and female students, I feel that they can be equally good or equally bad. right? And also in my previous position where I had a team, I actually had a team of mostly boys, so I didn't really have much of a comparison. I couldn't compare it with women in the media team, at least. But generally speaking, I feel that they are able to communicate. They communicate differently, but they can communicate equally well. Now, I feel that the difference here is that, for example, in a meeting situation, I feel, maybe as because I am a woman, I have experienced this before, I get cut off quite easily in meetings. I think there are several factors to this. Number one, I am not very loud when I speak. Number two, I have a high pitched voice. I'm shrilly. Maybe people don't like that. I don't know. So I feel like it's so
What are you
easy for me
talking
to get
about,
cut
Dr.
off.
Moni? What are you talking about? We
All
haven't
backed up by
noticed.
research, okay? So if you have a deeper voice, people are bound to listen to you more because they attach deeper voices to higher levels of credibility. Now, this works terribly against someone like me. So I do get cut off. And I always wonder, like, am I not saying the right thing? Or am I, I'm not sure what it is, but I feel that men tend to be able to speak longer in meetings before they get cut off. And I'm not completely sure why that is. Is it because they inspire more confidence? Is it because they are more assertive? And I think this type of treatment, maybe even at universities or even at home, I think a lot of these gender roles, it starts at home. Maybe their upbringing, especially in our culture where we say like, oh, men are supposed to be the leader. Men, you will grow up to be leaders. So they grow up thinking this. And they have this sort of confidence in them, which makes them a bit more assertive, thinking that they are going to be in leadership positions. Maybe this does affect their communication styles. But also, Maria, you and I, we've been in cultures, and also Dr. D, we've been in cultures where men and women have equal opportunities, right? And we see that no matter who the speaker is, man or woman, the audience is more willing to listen. And
somebody actually commented here, is it because male employees, a candidate, are judged based on their potential while female are judged based on their past performance? Does it contribute to all these problems having? Surab, you're the only male in the conversation right now.
Could
so
be, I don't know, but I've had lengthy
Surab, you have
conversations
listened
about this with men.
Yeah, I think extremely pertinent points, very, very poignant observations, and I would say very accurate as well, including the comment, right, between potential and performance. I think whether we accept it or not, the reality is that this is a biased society, and it's just slightly getting better as we go ahead. It's probably better than it was about 10 years ago, and but it's still there are a lot of major gaps. But to all the women who are listening here, especially those who are about to get into working life, I want to tell you about one of your biggest strengths in any communication or any interaction or any interview that you may be taking, and that is empathy. Women are far, 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 far more empathetic than men, which basically means that you try to understand the problem that you're looking to solve. You try to get into the shoes of the other person a lot better. And I think it's important for people to understand their strengths. Now, I don't want to generalize that women are more empathetic than men, though it's true to a large extent. But the bigger point over here is irrespective of what gender you are. And today we talk about third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh gender. It's not just men and women anymore. It's extremely important to be aware of your special skills, special strengths. If you're empathetic, it is powerful. If you're assertive, it is also powerful as a skill. So you don't try to be somebody else.
You off there. But the reality is, does male-dominated culture, for example, workplace, appreciate empathetic as a quality? Because maybe this is not something they want. They want something so strong. They want you to act like a man in order for you to be taken seriously. They want you to be assertive. So how do actually you, in the perspective of men here, how do we women protect our feminine energy in such a male-dominated, male-dom.
Dominated environment.
Yes, you know what I mean, right? So how do
No,
we do
absolutely.
that? Because you are knowing you as a friend and as a colleague, I know that you are not the typical patriarchal type person, but there are men like that out there. So reality is, how do we navigate through this? Just give us some
Yeah.
tips, man.
Yeah. So I think the first answer is it's not easy, right? The second is, increasingly, you need to be more confident about the workplaces you choose. So in my time and age, when we were looking for jobs, we were taking the first job that we were getting from an employer, right? Okay, I'm getting this, so just take it and go on, right? Today, people who are getting into jobs actually spend a lot of time trying to understand what is the culture of this place. Do, for example, women get equal opportunities? Or are they judged based on their lack of assertiveness, or even if it means ignoring some of the other skills? So it's really about getting into a point of choice, rather than being chosen all the time. That's point number one. So select the jobs, right? So select the boss, select the interviewer. So go the other way around, right? That's another way of being very confident, that it's not the interviewer who's looking to select you. You are also probably selecting the company that you want to work for. And if the interviewer tries to intimidate you or is trying to use some sort of dominance to express certain assertiveness, you probably know that you better not work in this place, right? I think it's a great test. A lot of people make their choices based on their interview experience. So employee experience is a very big subject, but it starts with interview experience. And people, at least who join our company, so we're a small team of about 40, 45 people. We always do a post-selection interaction with them, or even if they don't get selected, we like to ask, how was the interview experience? That tells you a lot about the culture of an organization. So please reflect on that before you make choices. The world is not perfect yet. It's a very long way to go, but you can make better choices. You can't change people, please understand. You cannot change a working environment all by yourself, right? So don't join a toxic company, if I may use that word. There are lots of companies with toxic culture.
That's a good.
And by mistake, if you do enter one, find your way out very quickly. Don't waste your time over there.
That is a very good tip. So let me unpack a little bit there where Surab says that, you can tell the energy of the company even during the interview already. So if you feel that this is very, the energy doesn't jive with you, maybe this is not for you. But I'm going to quickly go back to Dr. Maniza. How about you only know that the culture is like that when you're already in the organization? How do we navigate that? How do we get in terms of how we communicate in environment where we feel that, okay, this doesn't work?
Oh, very honestly, Maria, I'm not sure how we navigate that. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. And yeah, how do we navigate that, especially in an organ? I wouldn't say it's a cultural thing, right?
I think it's in many companies that actually people like Surab said, there are sometimes people can already know the energy before we join, but sometimes
yeah, but I
figure that
suppose
out later
sometimes
on.
yeah, sometimes we find out later on, or sometimes we're just so desperate for a job that we stay on, knowing that it is toxic. I'm not completely sure how to navigate it, but if I draw on experiences from cultures that respect women and men equally, or at the workplace, the only thing for women to do is just to keep on performing. Just keep on performing until they cannot deny that you are good at what you do and you're so valuable that they can't afford to let you go. But of course, even if you do keep on performing, I think there's always a part of us that wonders, like, I wonder what it's like to join the boys club, because I feel like in any organization there's always like this boys club where they hang out, where they, I don't know what they do, they smoke cigarettes together or they drink tea together, and somehow there's just never any women in those clubs.
Oh,
And I always wonder, what are they talking about? Are they talking about work? Are they talking about the next step for the organization? Are they talking about the next project? And you know what? True enough, sometimes they are. And you're just going to be completely left out. And then you just find out in the meeting when they say like, oh yes, we discussed the other day. And I'm thinking, when did we discuss
the
that?
other day when?
Because it happened in the smoking corner of the office where you never go. So yeah,
That
but
is the
yeah, that's my
reality, I
only
guess.
advice. Like women,
So,
just keep on doing your best and performing until they can't deny that you're good at what you do.
Dr. D, do you have anything to add on this? Do we need to change the way we communicate for women? At
You
least?
know, especially when it comes to gender and communication, I find it very, very tricky. So I think the best way, like, you know, like both Dr. Maniza and Surab had mentioned regarding is culture. And, you know, when culture has been there for so long, it's very difficult to change. It's almost impossible, if I may say that, you know. So for me, like, you know, especially being an educator, now I'm in education sector. So this is something that we might want to mold since, you know, they're in the university saying that, you know, look here, you know, we are all working. So, you know, like, let's say if you have experiences when you start working in the future, so make sure when you become a boss one day, you don't do that to other people. So I think that's the only way to break the cycle. And yeah, so that's the only way we can tell that. And then plus, when it comes to gender and communication, the role of, you know, female in the organization, I find it so terribly sad because it's not only like probably female might be sidelined by the males, but the problem is, you know, we need more girl gang, you know, like sometimes have you ever heard this saying, women hate other women? So can we like change that, you know, like especially you know, it's hard enough for struggling in the males, or especially if you're in, it depends on what industry you are in, and then you have female who are not being supportive to other females. So I think that is something that we really need to change right there.
That's a very good point. So there's a question here actually. I'm this is a little bit off topic. Somebody asked, feel free, any one of you who wanted to take this question. During the interview, employers often seeking for candidate that can fit into the company's culture. Should all the university students being exposed about organizational behavior or culture? Anybody wanted to up, or do you think that because employers often seeking candidate that can fit into the culture, should they being exposed to the company culture?
Yeah, you know, again, so if I were to say the one thing that really matters, you know, for both the organization and the candidate, it's the culture fit. You know, so what we call as a talent organization fit or a culture fit. Most companies, good companies, are becoming more intelligent in assessing that, in checking out value systems if they match really well, you know, with the organization. And you know, one simple trick that I can share with you, if you want to figure out if your personal culture fits with the organization culture, please understand that it can be quite a bad experience. Of course, experiences are experiences, and you sometimes have bad experiences. But if you can be intelligent to avoid it, I mean, I think it's always better. Always read about the leader of an organization, the guy or the lady who's sitting right at the top. Please try to see the kind of conversations they have in the interviews they give. You know, from there you get to know a lot about the culture of the place. Eventually, if the leader at the top is behaving very empathetically, is talking about gender diversity, is talking about new policies which are great for everyone, you know that all the good people in the company are gaining attention and all the toxic people are probably on the down, right? But if you've got a toxic leader at the top who's just concerned about top line, bottom line, and everything else doesn't matter, the only thing that matters is growth. And it's an up or out policy, and people have to work 12 hours a day, and there's nothing like work-life balance when you want to succeed. You know, you can figure out from those interviews about the culture of a place. Right?
Basically, they can ask question. They can ask question during interview, right? So for those who are actually being interviewed, there are people who asked me before that is it okay for them to ask question during the interview? What do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's one way of expressing your confidence, right? It's about being sure about what you want, from your job. Please understand, when you're entering the job world in 2021, you are in control. Trust me on that, right? It's not the interviewer. You need to decide what kind of workplace you want to work in. If you don't get it in one place, you get it in another, right? Be sure about what you want. So for example, if you're going to be pursuing a hobby alongside a job, please ask, is it okay, if every Friday evenings and then, later I play a band? And is it okay if I turn up a bit late on Monday morning?
But okay,
As long as
I'm gonna interrupt you a little bit earlier because there are fear for them to ask this question, Surab, because they're scared if they ask, do you guys do overtime here, or do I need to work on the weekends? So they're scared if they ask this question, people would think, oh, so you don't want to work in the weekends, So what do you think about the fear of asking questions?
if I'm going to be asking this question, that do I have to work on the weekends, and the answer I get back from the interview is, oh, so you don't want to work? Well, I would say I don't want to. Are you still interested? Because if you're not looking at my skill sets, and if you want me to be working like a donkey, and that's the only way to succeed in your organization, in 2021, this is not the organization you want to work for. Please remember that it's modern slavery, right?
Okay.
You can get paid a lot much more, but for being a slave, you're still a slave, right? You need to have a great mental balance along with your work. You need to be
That's right.
pursuing at least 3 or 4 other things, including family time, right? If you're going to
So-
be doing exactly what maybe our parents did, in a very, very tough time, maybe when it was very essential to pretty much work very long hours, you're really losing out an opportunity to be yourself and to explore things beyond work. Please understand, work is not everything, right? There is so much more in this life. There is so much more to do.
This
Don't
is
take it.
this is actually very millennials way of thinking. This is how millennials think. I don't think boomers things like this. The fact that you say work is not everything. So yeah, I think that's a very good point.
And I can tell you, Nurul, so workplaces who recognize that uh, are the ones you want to be working for, even if they're small companies. It's no longer about the big brand job. Earlier it was, no longer anymore. It's about the people you're going to work with. Do you like them? Do they relate to you? Did you like the interaction with them? Did you enjoy the interview experience? Can you work with them? Would you be happy to report to them? You got to be in control of your interview. And again, I would say, you're not being picked. You are the one who's picking the job. Get into that mental space if
Wow.
you do well. Yeah.
That is mind blowing. You are picking the job because I think the ideas about going to interview or communicating to interview is they are picking us. So the fact that you can think in a way that basically we are picking the job. So yes, that's
It's
also
like a
interesting.
date, right? Nurul, it's like your first date. And you got to like each other. That's as fundamental as it is to be want to meet again and again. Right?
Yeah,
If you
true,
don't,
true, true.
it doesn't work.
So okay, this is the last question for tonight. I don't even realize that we only have 10 minutes left because the conversation was so, it's 1.5 hours, and I feel like we should have this conversation for until tomorrow. But anyway, I am going to have like maybe 1 or 2 questions before we wrap this up. One of the question is that because I talk about millennials just now, soon the workforce will have boomers, we have Gen X, Gen Z, millennials and Gen Z together in a workplace. So I'm going to throw this question to Dr. D, as an expert. You see how Gen Z communicate. I don't know how, do you have Gen Z in your class right now? And before this, millennials are the in thing that people talk about, but now it's Gen Z and they communicate completely different. So how do we actually manage the communication differences, especially at workplace when there are so many different generation coming with different values and different communication style?
Oh my God, to be honest with you, that is just so difficult when you have groups of people, whatever you call them, boomers, millennial, Gen Z, Gen whatever. Because you see, in fact, right now, as much as we're trying to keep professional, so we are still struggling with some of probably the terms. So, and then plus, I noticed this a lot, especially, it depends on the groups, but you can definitely tell which group they belongs to, so you might find probably one group of people might be a bit polite. The other one, like, I don't care because these people are young. I'm the most righteous, like you get that. So you know where they belong, which group, okay? And then probably you might find another group. It could be, if they might easily be misinterpreted, for probably for being too, before this, they used to call a certain group of people as snowflake. And I kind of feel like it's a bit condescending, I find, because, those,
There are things that they call, there's a
those
trending hashtag okay boomers, before that,
okay, boomers,
that
that,
kind of,
that kind of thing. And then when I see that, I feel, oh my God, am I that old, or things like that, So it's a bit difficult. But I think the common ground here is, you have to know how to pick the right words, and you have to know how to communicate. And there are certain things that people like, for example, dear, or if you have to greet somebody, assalamualaikum, that kind of thing. So probably that is really acceptable, and then probably end something with thank you. So I think those are the things that I find quite universal. Okay, so and then when it comes, and that's another thing as well that I've been telling students to, especially those who are in their early 20s right now, especially when you write messages, you write your assignments. So I'll make a point there. I say, if you want to write a message or email to me, make sure you write in proper language. It doesn't matter whether in Bahasa or in English. No short forms, nothing. I don't know. Yeah, I can play around. I'm probably YOLO. Yeah, we all know that. But then, there are certain abbreviations that we are all be like, okay, what is this? So
NGL, like
yeah.
NGL. I don't even know what that is.
I,
See, this is why NGL. Then they have like, I am HO in my honest opinion.
ROT, what was that?
Yeah.
The floor, like those kind, yeah. And then there's another one. I don't know what that means. This whole thing about shish, I don't know what that is. I only know shish kebab, Surab, but I don't know. What that even means.
We have to keep up, man. Otherwise, these young people is gonna make fun of us.
I know, right? But then that might become a habit. When you go to the workforce, it might become a habit. So that is something. I think the common ground, you keep the language standard, I find. Not coming with like, a different probably expression. I find it a bit difficult. And that's when a lot of miscommunication happens too. Communication breakdown, we call it. So that is something, if keep it standard, guys, please.
Got it. Like, for example, keep it standard. I think that is like general rule for all communication at the workplace. You have to keep it standard. But I'm gonna touch upon the D is the differences in communication can create sort of conflict between different generations. The way that we talk among each other probably different. But when we talk to people who older than us, different. How they perceive our messages is different. How they take our opinion is different. So do you have any tips to navigate around all this generation gap when it talking to in a different
Yeah,
mindset or
sorry. Yeah, in my personal opinion, especially for fresh graduates, or probably somebody who might be younger in the crowd, in the organization, I find it a bit difficult. I genuinely feel sorry because we all have experience. It's like tipping on the eggshells all the time, So there are certain things I find that probably that somebody who might be senior, they can easily get offended even though you don't mean anything there. So I find that, especially when the best way I would say is, I mean, we're not trying to be a sucker to anybody. I'm sorry for the language, but then there are general rules here as well. Probably like, although you don't have to apologize, but sometimes you need to do it. Like, excuse me, I'm sorry, I might need to take a bit of your time, but there's something important that you need to attend. Like instead of saying, it's like how you say it again. Instead of giving instruction, you might say something, okay, this is urgent. You might say, boss, this is urgent, sign it right now. So you don't want to come across as someone really abrupt like that. So the best is, I'm sorry, but this might past the deadline already. So do you think you can, it's just like how
This,
we
the,
please,
how do I the finesse
communicate.
in communicating with
Yes,
people
yes.
differently.
Communication,
And
politeness, those kind of, if that works, just do it, So I know sometimes people will be saying, oh, well, what I mean, it's urgent. That person should do it. Yeah, well, yeah, we all understand that. But at the end of the day, if you plan to stay long in that organization, these are little things that you might want to invest in, especially building relationship and maintaining relationship. It's difficult, but they are manageable. Very, very manageable.
all right. Okay, guys, such a lively. I am so happy for the conversation tonight. I think there's a lot to unpack. There's so many tips from all of you. So we have about 3 minutes left, and I would want all of you, one by one, to have tips to leave the audience tonight with some tips when it comes to communication skills and employer expectation. What would be your tips? Let's start with Surab.
Okay, that's always a tough one, right? With so many things being heard and spoken about. So one thing which okay, you can take it in a funny way, but when you're joining work for the very first time, uh, when you join the job, a lot of time you're just going to be taking instructions. Please remember, right? So you're not required to be speaking too much unless your job is to speak, or if you're supposed to start selling right away. The one skill which is really powerful if you can start practicing very early on, and especially in your first job, is listening with concentration, right? Even if it's the interview or you're already in the job, if your supervisor is asking you to do something, if you can understand what is being asked of you, that's all they care about, and I can share that from my experience, because when we get fresh graduates in, it can be extremely irritating to keep explaining the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
To just get something very basic done. And it's not complicated stuff. It's just being very focused, very concentrated, being extremely attentive to what you're being asked of. You don't have to impress. You just have to be an exceptional listener who understands what is being asked of. Now, a second part of that is, if you don't understand what you're being asked of, don't stay silent. Ask a question right away. If you don't ask and you just get
They're
started doing
not,
your
but they
work,
don't understand.
I'm sorry to say, for using this language, you have a far better chance of getting screwed later on, right? So it's better to ask questions and clarify. Okay, you said this, but this is what I understood. Is this what you meant? Trust me, just these two skills, clarification by asking questions and being an exceptional listener, will get you through your interview and will also get you through the first couple of years of your job before you become a supervisor and manager.
Yeah. Wow. See? Where the golden nuggets from Surab: be an exceptional listener. If you don't understand, ask. Don't not, but actually you don't know what or understand something completely differently than what your boss said. So let's go to Dr. Moniza, your last tips for tonight in terms of communication skills and.
Well, I think there's two that I've not really talked about tonight. The first one is responsiveness, and this has a lot to do with what Surab has already mentioned. If you don't know, ask, right? But in terms of responsiveness, also coming from the field that I'm currently in, responsiveness here, what I mean is that I would really appreciate it if a fresh grad would actually respond to a question that I have and would respond in a timely manner. And would also, number three, think before responding. I know that's so much to ask from someone, right? But responsiveness is so important in what I do. It really gives me a heart attack when there's an emergency at the workplace, and then I text my my staff, and then no one responds, and I feel like, where are you people? Why are you adding to my stress?
Yeah.
So for me, responsiveness is essential. And I'm sure whoever your boss is in the future, if there is an emergency, or maybe not even an emergency, it's just a regular work job that needs to be done, responsiveness is extremely important. To say something, communicate. Second, is what Dee already mentioned, and I would really like to talk a little bit about that, which is respect, right? Respect for me, in a sense where you have to respect everyone,
Yeah.
not because of their titles, not because of their age, but because they're human beings. And I really, uh, I really wish that this would come. I don't know. This
Really.
would be like a normal practice to everyone. Don't respect someone just because they have a title, or just because they,
Preach.
yeah, they're older. And what I mean by respect is not necessarily like calling them in the right salutation, although that would be also very nice. But in terms of using using their time and using your own time, right? If you're gonna take too much of someone's time, that could be seen as disrespectful. Keeping someone waiting is can come across as disrespectful. And all of this is communication. How you use time is communication, and staying on topic when you are asked a question. Like, don't try to divert and I don't know, escape responsibility, and taking responsibility. These are all things that you can communicate, and they would come across as respect. So yeah, so those are the two things, the two R's: responsiveness and respect. And I think everyone will be fine.
Got it. Responsiveness and respect, guys. So, Dr. D, last words, communication skills, and employers' expectations.
Okay, I'm gonna be brutal honest with you. Okay, so in a
I'm
work
scared
life
already.
situation, in a work life situation, everyone is in for themselves. That's the reality. You have to think about it this way. They are not your friends most of the time, because if opportunity comes, that you'll be, or they will be, your competitors. So that's always the best tip I can give when in this kind of situation is keep yourself professional. Always be professional. Do not gossip. Do not talk about the other colleagues, because eventually that will be circulated among you guys. And then as well as in a workplace, it is important for you to be associated with people who are really supportive, because trust me on this, once, let's say, if things go south, probably, people, we who likes working? Let's be honest. If you can sit down and money drops from the sky, everybody will be happy, right? But then the reality is we have bills to pay. We have to work, right? So, and then to maintain that, to keep the interest, to keep the happiness at the workplace, it is very difficult. So make sure that you find the right support, the right peers. I mean, work colleague that are supportive, but you have to remember this as well. You have to be very careful about the kind of information that you're sharing with your colleagues as well, because you don't want that to backfire. We don't know
I
how
mean,
people are.
got it, got it. I mean,
Yeah,
we can trust people, but not, because
too
sometimes you never
trusting.
know
Yeah.
what is a people. That's a very good tips. Okay, we are actually 4 minutes more than we're supposed to. I have to let me take an opportunity to properly thank you guys. I'm gonna end the stream, but don't go anywhere yet because I want to properly say goodbye to everyone. But for this session, I am so grateful. I am so honored to be in the presence of three of you. I think we have so many tips tonight with those of you who are watching. I hope that there are many takeaways that you can. So there will be more. There will be more career real talks where True to the Zoo is only, we only talk. We will only be real talk. In True to the Zoo webinar is only real talk, just like how Surab did it, how Dr. D, how Dr. Moniza, they are getting real with all of you when it comes to meals and. So I'm going to end the session tonight by saying thank you for tuning in, and also stay safe and stay sane during this lockdown. And I will see you again another episode webinar the coming week. So follow us on our social media so that you can get update on all our webinars and also virtual event. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.